you rang the alarm bell loudly, clearly with that one. The challenge went out, and over the next hour or so, in fact, for the rest of the day, we'll be unpicking that and seeing how we out here, because we're the leaders, we've got to do that. We've got to pick up this challenge you're throwing down, actually do it. But I wonder if I can just start off, you really see it that way, that the soul of religion is at stake. We're at a moment in time when it's that important, perhaps uniquely in man's history?
I think it's important distinctively at this moment in history, not because of anything dealing with religion, but just because technology has transformed the consequences of wrong decisions. It's almost as though we are the first generation in all of human history that does not have the luxury of making mistakes and learning from them. If we get it wrong this time, we're going to blow up the world. We're going to so despoil the environment as to deleteriously impact the future of humankind. We're going to misapply scientific discoveries in a way that can transform much of the world. And the rabbis 2,000 years ago said, the sword enters the world because of justice delayed and justice denied. In a world now in which most of the have-nots know exactly what the haves have, the economic disparities that we've lived with throughout human history are just no longer tolerable. They were never morally tolerable. But today they're not functionally tolerable any longer. And at such a time, Brian Hare, a teacher to many of us, is fond of saying, you know, in a lifetime of some people alive today, we've cracked the genetic code, split the atom, pierced the veil of outer space itself. In a world in which you can do everything, what you should do, the moral question, is the ultimate question facing humanity. And on that, the religious traditions of the world have a rich treasure to offer in guiding the world how to move forward. That's the distinctive moment in the role of religion at this time.
So, David, I'd like to bring it down to the personal then. What did you do on 9/11? You heard the radio or whatever, you heard it. What were the first calls that you made?
It happened coincidentally that we had come in early to my office. I work in Washington, D.C. I represent the National Reform Jewish Movement, the theologically liberal segment of American Jewry, the largest segment of American Jewry, and very social justice oriented. And I run that public policy social justice arm of the movement. And we were having a senior staff meeting sitting in our conference room when somebody, I don't know if they were, had their computer open or a radio that came in late and just heard the first attacks that there had been a plane crash. My first call actually was to my wife, who was a journalist saying, who was taking a day off to get ready for Rosh Hashanah, drop everything. She was literally at the checkout line in the supermarket. You got to get to your office right away. And then I called the president of our national denomination to be sure that he was aware of what was happening. And we began to talk about two things. One is, once we realized it was a terror attack, and then, you know, just a few miles away, the attack on the Pentagon hit. One was the safety of my staff. I wanted to get everyone out of downtown Washington. Some people weren't able to get into areas where their homes were, so we gathered people at someone's apartment for a while. But the other is, what would the long-term implications of this be? I don't know that we were more prescient than anyone else, but I think, like most of you who are viewing this on Odyssey, and most of you who are here today, you all had the same sensation that something has changed. Mm-hmm. The world will never quite be the way it was before. And I think that was real in ways we see more clearly now, for better and for worse.
And because of your background, because of anti-Semitism, which you will have had to live through and deal with, did your view of Muslims change that day? Did you suddenly feel
No, for me personally, it didn't. a few years earlier, the Congress had created something called the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom and created the first U.S. ambassador for religious freedom. I was honored to serve on that nine-person council of the commission, and have been looking at the issue of the Muslim communities across the globe here, where Muslims were subject to persecution and discrimination, either by other Muslims or by non-Muslims, had been speaking out for several years about it, and over the process of doing that had come into personal proximity with Muslims who have become part of my life over the last several years before. So I think whatever transformation had happened in my life regarding Muslims and Islam had happened over the several years prior to this. And I am convinced, by the way, you can dialogue all you want, and it's crucially important, but if it's doing things together that really builds trust and understanding and common purpose, and it is socializing together with families together and getting to know each other that really transforms people.
So what was the first thing you did? Because I saw...
But what I did find just a few days afterwards was the stories coming in from many of these people I had about, I'm scared to send my children to school. They're being harassed, they're being taunted. Here, a Sikh friend who, after a Sikh was shot at a gas station, saying, we don't know what to do. And here, many of the lessons that we had learned in the Jewish community through fighting anti-Semitism and persecution were of help. We were able to draw on them. Organizations like the ADL and ourselves and the American Jewish Committee and community relations councils all reach out to Muslim communities and Asian communities that were perceived as being Muslims, and it became a centerpiece of our community relations work beginning a few days afterwards. I don't think for the first 3 days it was clear, but after about the third day, it was clear that this had changed our community relations agenda for the foreseeable future, and it would be a major priority of what we were doing.
We're standing with you, in effect.